Town Centre Chevrolet Oldsmobile next to the Guildford Shopping Centre in sunny Surrey.
Dawn, and they're on the street searching for values. The garage sale people. On to the sale where everything is new, yet at low garage sale prices. The great Canadian garage sale at Canadian Tire. Right now, easy to apply CGE silicone seal that saves heat, doesn't crack, peel, or fall out, and sticks to almost anything is just $4.50 a cartridge. Save $2.99 and sign up for a chance to win a car or trip. This week, follow those who know a value when they see one. The garage sale people at Canadian Tire.
We're coming through for you.
Good morning. Forgive me if I take a couple of minutes this morning to grind a couple of axes. I was widely reviled, as some of you may recall, when I had the audacity to complain that the new putative Prime Minister now in office, a fellow by the name of Mulroney, wasn't being very forthcoming when he decided not to talk to any reporters on the West Coast. And people like Dalton Camp and Lloyd What's-His-Name of CTV and smart Alec Huey Segal thought it was very funny to see Webster fuming and raging because Mulroney wouldn't talk to Webster. I am happy to report, with my normal sardonic, twisted sense of humour, that the panic is now on in eastern Canada, because the Prime Minister is now deliberately trying to curb the flow of information on the changeover. And Eric the Red, the hard-nosed guy from the Yukon, will make damn sure that no cabinet minister in the Tory government dare breathe a word to any of these illiterate monkeys in the press gallery. And I'm speaking generically on his behalf, that's not my description of them, so that they are kept well away from the fount of information. And the dear old Globe is dripping tears, and so is the Eastern media mafia. Mulroney won't talk. Maybe they'll realize now that that's what I was trying to establish before the man was elected. And I wish them all the luck in the world as they go about on their hands and knees saying, please, Brian, dear Brian, do drop us a crumb or two of comfort, little bits of information, because some of us may want jobs yet as one of your new vast fleet of information officers. Is that enough on that? Yes, I think that's enough on that. But a couple of things about his promises. The Tories have already carried out a promise to kill the sports pool. Big decision. And they've kept another vital promise on which the fate of the nation is resting. They're going to give the armed forces back their uniforms at a cost of about $10,000 member of the armed forces per head. And I'm sure that's very good, even though practically none of the people in the armed forces have ever seen the old traditional uniforms. But the important thing in the keeping of that promise by Mr. Mulroney is that it will give, I think the figure's about, 85 million for new uniforms? That'll be a terrific boost for the protected textile industry of the province of Quebec with a little spillover into Ontario. And who knows, we might build a new uniform factory with this money in Schefferville, Quebec. But promises are promises. But the thing that really pleases me this morning is that the Eastern media mafia are now going to find out that they were wrong to kiss Mulroney's boots during the campaign. Now, there's a local story brewing up in British Columbia which I reckon will be the noisiest story because somebody's threatening the trees in Stanley Park. And if it weren't for Greenpeace opposing the extension to the aquarium, I'd be totally on the side of those who want to keep Stanley Park as it is. Intrepid reporter Schneider was at the public meeting last night.
It was standing room only. Hundreds made it inside, but many were left angrily at the door.
Well, I think they should take that into consideration. Look at the people there. There's just as many out there.
Over 400 people to give their 2 cents worth on a proposed redevelopment of the aquarium, a multi-million-dollar expansion that will give the killer whales a lot more room.
The aquarium plans here to develop what will be the finest exhibit of its kind anywhere in the world. What we are trying to do here is redevelop Stanley Park, an area immediately adjacent to the existing aquarium, into the world's finest exhibit of killer whales. The exhibit, as it's presented here, will involve a terraced garden which will have a whale exhibit sunken into it. The perception of the exhibit from outside of the aquarium will be that of a beautiful landscape terrace. As you can see here, planting, shrubbery, grass, waterfalls, and a waterway on the outer area of the exhibit will create the interface between the aquarium and the adjacent park. And we feel it would be a tremendous addition to the appearance of the aquarium from outside of the exhibit.
How are you going to sway people so that you can cool some of this opposition?
This is an excellent project. We don't perceive this as taking anything from Stanley Park. We perceive this as giving something to Stanley Park.
To say that 600 or 700, and I don't know, these figures have been bandied around by everybody, more people there aren't going to affect the traffic, the parking, and the noise is a bunch of hooey.
I believe this is a frivolous use of funds at a time when we need money in so many other areas.
You couldn't use that for a picnic area if you wanted to. It's so wet and boggy you couldn't sit on it. And then besides that, what are you going to do about the goose crab?
Beware what you are doing, Vancouver Foundation and Macmillan Foundation, lest you play the arms merchants to these aggressors. The aquarium juggernaut slices further down the slope, severing the park in two, seeking its ultimate Lebensraum, the sea. This is the aquarium's 5th expansion, and each time it says, no more, no more, goodbye Austria, goodbye Poland. The ossification boys of public relations have really earned their money.
This issue has been covered time and time again. I think that it's time for us to take care of our whales. But I feel that the whales could do, better back swims and that in a much, much bigger pool. I mean, would we keep a 3-inch goldfish in a 3 by 5-inch tank? Of course we wouldn't. So why should we keep 3 big whales in such a tiny pool, eh?
My congratulations to the observer there who attacked the empire building aquarium people by saying that they're seeking their ultimum Lebensraum, the sea. Now, another change of pace. Deadly serious question this morning. Do you see this little boy? His name is Christopher Nichols. He represents an incredibly human problem of missing children, some say kidnapped children. His father, Barry Nichols, is here this morning to tell us his problem. And with him is Julie Cullen, who's the national chairman of Child Find for Canada and runs an organization called BC Child Find. Now, to keep myself on the right side of the accurate information, I've asked my friend Karen Nordlinger, who's a lawyer and expert in family law, to be with us here this morning, too. What else have I got to do this morning? Yes. Reporter Steve Wyatt has been out and about looking at the brand new, magnificent cancer clinic operated under the Cancer Control Agency of British Columbia. It opened formally sometime in the middle of next week. And it's Steve?
Jack, that building signals the end of a very long and hard, almost 10-year battle. That's the new cancer clinic under the direction of the Cancer Control Agency of British Columbia. 1 out of every 4 British Columbians will likely develop some form of cancer this year, and this new building is offering new hope for those victims.
And next, the tragedy of the kidnapped children in this and other provinces after the break.
To move over to you as close as I can get, Julie.
Well, hey, what are friends for?
There's another story to it.
You want her over this way more?
Too common.
Back way more, Fred.
Well.
The lady in black more.
It's ironic that I bumped into you on the street that day and told you about my problem. Here we are.
It's a regular feature of U.S. television that they slap up pictures of missing children and have been very successful in locating numbers of them, both in Canada and throughout the United States. And while I know that we have many problems about custody battles, I'm sometimes a little delicate about calling them kidnapped children, because there are two sides to every story in a marital dispute, and who knows which parent should have the child. They each made the mistake in the first place of marrying or living with each other. Julie Cullen is the National Chairman of Child Fund for Canada.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about it first. How long has this organization been established?
Approximately about a year.
A year?
Established in Calgary, in view of the fact that there was a young girl kidnapped by a stranger, and a lady by the name of Kathy Morgenstern felt very moved to do something about the problem and started Child Find in Canada.
Was I wrong when I concentrated in marital disputes? Do we also, like the States, have the problem of really missing kidnapped children?
Yeah, we do have the problem of both. However, 85% of my caseload at the moment across the country is parental kidnapping.
What is your caseload as such?
Right now, we're searching for approximately 100 children.
And these are any of them actually kidnapped, wanted by the police as kidnapped children?
About 15% of them.
So there are 15 of that 100, you might say, who have disappeared off the streets.
Right.
And that's where it would be fully legitimate on all occasions to run the picture of the child and say, this child has been kidnapped.
Yes, I think that's appropriate. Sure.
Have you achieved any kind of public service recognition by television stations in that area yet?
Coming. Slowly, Jack.
Coming.
Yeah.
But nobody does it as a regular feature?
Not yet.
Now, let's say, tell me more about that. Does one have to buy your services?
No.
You're a non-profit organization.
We're non-profit. We're going to seek tax exempt, and our parents pay a nominal $20 registration fee if they can pay it. And that is only to protect me to find out whether these parents are truly interested in finding their children and having active roles in their upbringing. Mm-hmm. The parents that just want to find their children, unfortunately, we don't have time to set up our team of investigators on the case on their behalf.
You have a team of investigators?
Yes, definitely.
How many?
11.
11. These are volunteers, are they?
They are volunteers to the point, as I was explaining to Karen, that the initial investigation is done pro bono, which is for free. Mm-hmm. And when the investigation requires surveillance or becomes complex, then the investigator is put in touch directly with the client to work out the appropriate fees.
Okay. And of these missing children, including all the marital dispute children, custody cases, how many would you say there are in Canada?
I can't even give you a guess. I can tell you that there are probably thousands. I really can't narrow it down because no one has accurate statistics.
We normally take 10% of what the Americans say, don't we?
Yeah, and the Americans are saying around 150,000.
So we might have 15,000.
I think that that's very conservative.
If we're as emotionally disturbed as they are, which is quite likely.
Right.
All right, now, let's have a look at Barry Nichols. I hesitated even putting the picture of your child on the air this morning because, and I think Karen might agree with me on this, one never knows which is the goodie and which is the baddie, does one?
That's right.
Yeah, this, of course, is Karen Nordlinger, the lawyer, but I'll continue with Barry for a moment. What are the facts in your case? And you're going to have to tell me.
Okay.
When did you get married?
I got married in '78.
And when did you get divorced? When did
not
you
divorced as yet. We separated in '81.
So you were 3
summer.
years.
All right.
You had how many children?
We have one child in this case in question.
And that's Christopher.
That's correct.
Christopher Seiji
Nichols.
Why the Japanese name?
My wife is Japanese.
Your wife is
Japanese. She was born in Tokyo and has landed immigrant status in Canada.
So after an initial good enough marriage, you split up for your own reasons. And
right.
Who got custody? Did you go to court for a custody order?
A year after we split up, we had joint custody during the next year, or most of that year, and then she went in and got interim custody.
What did you get at that time?
I got very liberal access, Jack, which meant that I got to see him every Wednesday night, plus every second weekend, plus 5 days at Christmas, 5 days at Easter, and then a 6-week period stretch in the summer.
And when did you discover your child, Christopher, was no longer with his mother in Vancouver?
Well, that was on, actually, I first discovered that I was not going to see him when I went to pick him up on July the 20th to start my 6-week summer access period, and he was not at daycare. We then tried to locate him over the next few days. I saw Reiko the following week on a Tuesday evening when I went to the home, and she appeared in an upstairs window and just said to me, "Your child is not here, he's out of town," and she closed the window, and that was end of conversation. Now, what you do at that point is, I didn't have a warrant for her arrest at that point. You know, the police, you can call them, but they're really not going to beat the door down for you, you know. So what do? So I tried to keep tabs on her, thinking that she would come back in a few days, and then we'd be able to sit down logically and discuss the thing and get it all sorted out. That didn't happen, and over the period of the next few days, I did manage to get a warrant out for her arrest. I did try to enforce it, which was not possible. And
how good was the warrant?
Yeah, you sometimes wonder.
A warrant
As a matter
for
of fact,
what?
It was a contempt of court order because she refused to give me access when I should have had it, according to the court, by the way. And then on the fact that I couldn't exercise that access, so I got a warrant put out for her arrest. Now, that was just in the province of British Columbia.
Did you know where she was at the time?
No, I did not. As a matter of fact, as it turns out now, we have every reason to believe that I got the warrant on Thursday, and it was on the day prior to that she probably left town.
For where?
Well, we're not sure of that. I'm convinced that she left by airplane because a friend picked her car up from the airport the following day. But at this point, she could be in the state of New Jersey, she might be in Hawaii, she could be at any place in Canada.
But does she have authority to live in the States?
No, she really doesn't.
She's a landed immigrant in
She
Canada.
could live there for up to 6 months.
So how long ago? That was July of 20, August,
Right.
September, October. That's when you last saw your child.
I saw my child. I had last access to my child on July the 9th.
July the 9th.
Right.
Karen, is now you had a court order for access, and you now have got a warrant out. She's been charged with contempt of court.
Yeah, that warrant has since been lifted as well. The frustration, after you get over the initial fear of seeing your child gone, by the way, and the reason I found out is because on the 1st of August, I went around to the apartment again to see if I couldn't affect access, and the drapes were gone, the furniture was gone, and that's when real panic sets in.
All right, now we'll explain the panic and the possibilities and the probabilities and what the laws are within Canada with Karen Nordlinger after the break. Total access to you haven't got custody of the child yet.
Yeah, actually I do, Jack.
He doesn't want that brought out for some reason.
Well,
he thinks that if his wife finds out that the courts have awarded him custody.
You gotta tell me that.
I think you do.
I'll tell you what, I've also considered that, and I think it's not going to be a problem.
Now, let me get your facts right, Barry. One, you separate after a period. She gets interim custody. You get regular access, right?
Right.
The child disappears.
Right.
You go to the authorities and you get a contempt of court issued against her.
Right.
You also get a BC warrant for arrest. Have you since, and none of them were effective, have you since gone back to the court and got custody of the child on paper?
Yes, I did.
You have now. So you now got custody, but you haven't got the child.
That's correct.
Karen, is this a common situation?
Yes. It is not uncommon.
What can he do about it? Legally speaking, as of this moment, where does he stand?
Well, it sounds like he's done all the right things legally. He now has a custody order, which is a good thing for him to have. The problem is finding the child.
Now, if that child reappeared in British Columbia, there'd be no problem. The courts, would they act quickly?
Yes.
Supposing that child turned up in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, New Brunswick, PEI, Newfoundland, Uncle Tom Cobley, and Quebec.
Then what he would probably want to do is go to the province where the child was and enforce the British Columbia order.
And would he have to do that, or would the Attorney General of BC do it for him?
It would be faster and easier if he went.
So he's got to have money enough to go there, locate the child,
Yes.
go to the courts there, and would they automatically enforce the BC order?
They wouldn't automatically. It seems that there is a reciprocal agreement between the provinces, and what they would do is look at what is in the best interest of the child. Now, if it's clear to them that this is a pure kidnapping situation or abduction situation, then in all likelihood they will enforce the BC order. If they found, however, that the reason the child was abducted, and I don't think that this pertains to this particular case,
No.
but if the child had been abducted from a custodial parent, someone who had custody of the child, and that custodial parent had been abusing the child, or had been in some way neglectful of the child, or in some way putting the child at risk, then the court that was asked to enforce the British Columbia order would have the power to say, we're not enforcing the British Columbia order under those circumstances. We see that there is evidence that this child is being abused, and if we sent him back, he would
just to
perhaps
deal with
be
the
abused.
Canadian thing, every judge in Canada, therefore, who comes up with a custody case in front of him, while he tends to enforce the original province's order, has the jurisdiction to make his own decision on an interim basis or even a permanent basis.
I believe so. Now, I'm thinking of the British Columbia law, and I believe it's reciprocal throughout. Now, I'm not sure that all the terms are reciprocal, but I'm pretty sure that that's
reciprocal
exactly right.
throughout. But the system doesn't work well, does it?
Well, it works well once you find the child. I mean, it works to get the children to the right place. But first of all, you've got to find the child, and secondly, you've got to have the resources to get into court, to hire lawyers, to do those kinds of things.
That brings us back now to Child Finders. What successes have you had with Child Finders? Mind you, you're a new organization, I understand. And you were explaining something about the national statistics. Give me that again.
The Stats Canada did a survey in 1976 which indicated at that time there were 62,000 children missing. I have no way of saying whether the sources are still accurate or not, and I very much doubt it, and I would give an educated guess that we've probably doubled in that time.
But half of those kids would be?
Runaways.
Runaways. So that brings us down to 30,000 missing children of various kinds. And on your own experience, 15% might be actual physical kidnappings.
They're all physical kidnappings, Jack, but in terms of the stranger abductions versus the parental, 15% would be abducted by strangers, pedophiles.
What do you do when you find a child in another province?
Well, it depends who the custodial parent is and what has happened in the province while the child has been gone. Now, for instance, if we located Barry's child in Alberta, his BC order is no good. He has to go into court and fight the order. That can take weeks, literal weeks. Now, you're aware of the Callos case that was before the courts here. It took this gentleman all summer to put her ex parte order aside and achieve the honor of his New York custody order, which has been done by
Oh, you're
the
talking
judge.
about the case that's been in the paper this week. Now, that was a classic example which makes people like me a little hesitant. That was a case where the first story in the paper said, hey, this horrible guy has come and stolen his child.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Comes up in New York.
Well, we should backtrack a little bit here. Let me give you the facts as we know them now. Madeleine Laporte had custody in New York, but the order stated she wasn't to leave the jurisdiction. She did so, and so he was given interim custody. She comes out to BC and was scared by seeing her son on the roll call after the movie Adam. She immediately went to a lawyer and achieved an ex parte order in BC. Well, her lawyer sent a copy to John in New York, so he came out here. We located the children.
You did?
We did, in Burnaby. And he came out to fight the order. His first trip around was in early July. The decision was made this week. That's how long that took. And he had to pay for a psychological evaluation out of his own pocket, plus legal expenses and airfare and accommodation.
So it was
it's
then
very
he
expensive.
decided to, quote, kidnap the kids.
Yes, he felt that at the time with the issue of the press releases in the paper, he was certain he was not going to be able to get access and custody because of the geographical difference in terms of access. And he was very frustrated, emotionally spent thousands of dollars doing this, and decided that, hey, I'm going to do this myself. All I'm doing is breaking a BC custody order, and she's already broken a New York order. So here we have a situation, no win for the children. My concerns at this point are still for the children, and Ms. Laporte no longer has an ex parte order giving her custody in BC.
So therefore, he's now back in New York.
Right.
And his situation is perfectly legal.
Yes, it is.
In New York.
In New York.
Is he still technically in trouble in BC?
He could be, although I would have to check. Maybe Karen can fill us in there as to the law, what would happen if he came back to BC. He hasn't really violated an order because there is no longer one in existence.
Oh, it's since been...
It's been set aside.
What do you make of that one?
I'm not sure.
But it does demonstrate so clearly
Yes.
how that the moment a parent comes to you and makes claims, The other side of the story is totally different, complex. Your story seems to be quite straightforward at the moment.
Well, to some extent, it was in March of '81 that my wife, before we ever separated, first abducted my 2 children over a weekend that I was away to the state of New Jersey. It took me several thousands of dollars and about 3 months of time to talk them back into the province.
But that was your problem, purely and simply.
Yeah, except that there
she
was
had taken the kids away from the marriage.
Right.
But the mother had taken the kids away. You can't call that an abduction.
Oh, yes, you can.
Can you?
You certainly can, sure.
Under the criminal code.
251.1, I think, is what it is, Jack.
My wife decides to take the kids away for the weekend to skook them to Hong Kong. Is that an abduction?
Well, if it's not just a holiday trip that you were planning or that you knew about, sure. If she took them with the intent of removing them from your care, it may be abduction under the criminal code.
The clue is that you walk into the closet and the clothes aren't there. Neither are the suitcases, and the kids aren't there.
That's different. She's skipped permanently, gone forever.
As a matter of fact, when my wife left this time, she informed friends of hers to come pick up her car from the airport, as they tell the story, and take the furniture and burn it. You know, that sounds fairly terminal. So my situation now is, of course, is that I'm persistent. I mean, I'm not looking just to find out where my child is. I'm going to get him back. I'm going to get him back.
And you would, of course, if you had to kidnap the child in New Jersey, you'd bring the child back.
I'd do anything that I could do legally without harming the child, yeah, you bet.
A lot of times, Jack, what happens is the parent who takes the child on a visitation, which is typically when these things happen, they'll phone their ex-spouse and say, I've just decided we're not bringing the children back and you're never going to see them again.
I haven't had that courtesy yet, though. I haven't had a phone call yet. And there's no way of tracing the phone call, but I haven't even had a phone call from my son to say, hi, Dad, I'm okay, you know, I'm alive, and I'm...
Well, I think we should go to phones on this, probably get some horror stories, may not, after the break. Are you telling me what to do in my own program? Yeah. 3 sevens. Well, keep me to 3 sevens. This women's lib is a bunch of bullshit. Well, we're going to go to the phones. I have with me Julie Cullen of BC Child Find. Is that how you like to be called?
Child Find BC.
Child Find BC. Barry Nichol, distraught, pretty distraught, and so would you be too, father, and Karen Nordlinger, my lawyer friend. Go ahead, please. That's you. That's you, ma'am. Speak up.
Yes, I'd like to talk to Julie Cullen.
Oh, they're all here. Go straight ahead.
Okay, Miss Cullen, what makes you think that the children aren't better off where they are? Maybe, perhaps, they weren't really meant to be with the original parent that the courts gave custody to.
Well, that's a good question. What I should tell you is that we will only search for the parent who has legal custody or legal access of that child. And yes, I do have to make moral considerations and speak to the lawyers and possibly social workers in some instances to determine whether we are searching for the right parent.
Give me that again. You will only look for a child where the parent has legal access.
Or legal custody in
or
some
legal
form.
custody.
Yeah.
That sounds reasonable.
But it's still not fair. I mean, children are sometimes left better off with the parents that kidnap them.
Ma'am, we don't know that, but somebody's got... If the courts give you the right to do something, that gives you at least some moral rectitude, does it not? A legal rectitude. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes. Jack?
Yes?
Good morning, and good morning to you, Jack. I have here, my child was abducted 3.5 years ago. My boy was 11 years old. And I gave my husband custody of the child because he had the means financially.
All right, just a minute now. How old is the child now?
15.
15. Where is the child now?
The child is in New York.
Child is in New York.
But it took a big, but I became ill. I have...
No, just a minute. Did you give your husband custody of the child, you said, because he had the money to look after the child?
That's right. And in the separation agreement, it said that none of us would be able to take the child out of the province without the consent of the other.
And he didn't do that?
No, he left. He had the child was living with me, then the child was living with him. Well, that's a different thing. But
Hold on. Where does she stand then? Karen, where does she stand?
Well, if he took the child out of the province and in contravention of a separation agreement, I would have thought that she could have gone to court and got a court order for whatever other relief she had in the separation agreement, access or custody, given the fact that there was already an agreement between the parties, and then she would have had something to work with in New York.
Are you in the courts just now, ma'am?
Just a minute, Jack. I don't think the lady understood right. Then my child was taken out of overnight. He was taken away. He didn't come to me Saturday and Sunday as he was supposed to.
But ma'am, what have you done legally? What is your legal position now?
But the thing is that because I didn't have the money, I went to legal aid. I tried to find my son, and I had the case with legal aid with a lawyer, 6 months, and I didn't know where the boy was. Then I said to the lawyer, now look, this man is a well-to-do man. As a matter of fact, I like to throw this in, Jack, you know.
Ma'am, I can't go into all the details, but you've raised a very, and hold on, but you've raised a very important point. If you've got no money, you're dead in the water.
That's right.
Is that right?
That's right. That's why we're here.
Would you take that woman's number off the air so we can talk to her later? I don't want to appear to be rude to her, but it'll go on forever, and I want to get a sampling. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I have a child that my boyfriend and I had when we were living together, and he still sees him and pays $100 a month to Victoria, and Victoria sends it to me. He likes to see my child, and I want to know how I can have more control over where he takes my child and the kind of activities that they do.
That's a question for you, Karen.
We don't always agree on...
Well, it's slightly off the topic, but we'll take the question.
Well, aside from just keeping a line of communication with your husband and trying to establish some sort of way that you can work out disagreements, either through mediation or a counselor, you're going to have to go to court, and even if you've got a court order saying that he has to do certain things with the child, it's very difficult to enforce that. So really, what I suggest to people in that kind of situation is that they just really try and work it out between themselves. There really isn't much leeway.
Okay, ma'am, but at least you know where the child is. Go ahead, please.
Jack, 3 questions. Have we checked with Japan? I noticed that didn't mention that the mother might have gone to Japan.
Well. Second?
Is there an agreement, an international agreement with Japan for return of children that might be moved there?
Third one?
And for the child finders, have they advertised in the Japanese newspapers, for instance?
Well, he's got a Japanese complex, this guy. Your wife travels on a Canadian passport, is that correct?
She has landed immigrant status in Canada. Now, what I did to effectively, at least according to the Japanese consulate, close the door there was I went down, found out that a passport had never been applied for Seiji, and therefore I put him on my passport. Now, according to the Japanese consulate, he cannot enter Japan without a Canadian passport. That's what I'm told.
What about international reclamation? And I remember doing some horror stories in Britain and Germany and Holland.
There's now a Hague Convention to which Canada is a signatory, and it's a convention that basically says that each of the signatory countries will honor the other signatories' court orders for custody.
Well, is that working?
It seems to be, yes. There haven't been that many cases under it that I know of. There's certainly been 1 or 2 in Canada.
Are you aware of that Hague Convention?
Oh, sure, I'm aware of it, but in my opinion, it doesn't work. It's another piece of paper that's there in effect, but nobody's utilizing it. You know, a BC court order is not good anywhere else in the world other than BC. There is no reciprocation between Japan, and we have to look at this from the legal standpoint. We have to look at this in terms of the prevention standpoint as well, and say, where are we going to take our children from here? If there's no reciprocation, the second caller has other avenues other than legal open to her, but she has to be willing to learn to street-proof her children and talk about prevention of abduction and teach her child some things that the child can do to protect him or herself.
It is, of course, an imperfect society, and this problem will always be with us.
I'm afraid so.
It's just why the parent has been subjected to having to go into an area where he believes his child is, in his best interest, try and get that child out of that area and bring him back into the jurisdiction of the court where at least he'd be dealt with.
Yeah, agreed entirely, but it doesn't always work. After the break. Yeah, what? We're just talking with Julie Cullen and Karen about the American border. People wonder why these kids go across the border. The border's wide open, isn't it?
Sure, sure. In the Callis case, Bruce Katz wrote a letter to the both borders and said, please don't let these children through with either parent because it's pending before the courts, and Mr. Callis got through no problem.
Well, no wonder. Can you imagine the fuss that would be here if every time you or I went across the border they're checking everybody against child custody orders?
Well, I can tell you one case of ours that soured a little bit is that a man from California came up here and kidnapped his son back from Surrey, and the ex-wife notified the border that he was coming through, and he was detained for 2 hours before they released him.
Well, they knew he was coming.
They knew he was coming.
Well, that's intelligent, isn't it? Go ahead. Here's a man who abducted his child twice, you tell me. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Why did you abduct your child?
I abducted him because he was in a bad environment, but I couldn't get the law to prove that because every time somebody went to check it out, the environment was always perfect. But the first time I abducted him, I took him to Toronto. I was working for the Toronto Star, was because she got beaten very badly, and she came to me for help. She was all black and blue, and I did not want my child in that environment. And I used to go down to Montreal every second week to visit him. Then we went to court, and I lost him again, and I then moved to Vancouver here and took him here because of the bad environment. And a year and a half later, they found me and removed him from my home. Now, they didn't arrest me. They threatened to arrest me, but they didn't. But they said, I think the judge realized that what I did was for the best thing for my child.
But he didn't give you custody?
No, never got custody. I wasn't even allowed to open my mouth in that court case. That's all it did was cost me money. It actually broke me 3 times.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is 5.5 years I haven't seen my child. But once a year I get a phone call. I should get one any week now. And I'm just told he's okay and everything that, and I'm allowed to say hello to him. But he's not allowed to tell me where he is or anything.
Here's a case where the law tracked him up. Has your wife got money?
Well, I don't think they have too much money. I've even offered to send money. She just has to tell me where to support him. Just because I can't see him, I shouldn't be able to, not support him.
Well, nothing we can tell you that you don't already know, is there?
No.
Thank you, sir. Best of luck. God help you. Go ahead, please.
Oh, yes. I'm one of those unemployed university students, and I certainly have an ability to think. Can I help?
Sure, you can help. You can give me a call at the office, and I'll give you an application to fill in, and once you're screened, by all means, we need all the volunteers that we can get.
She's not going to make enough money to live working for Child Finder, is she?
Any money for this? I think it's one of the outrageous.
All right, what's your number?
738-3717.
Got it. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Bye now.
I agree with her that it's one of the outrages.
Oh, I know. Heartbreak stories all over the place. Aldergrove, go ahead, please.
Yes, this is a hypothetical question for Mr. Nichols, and I hope I don't put him too much on the spot with it. I'm not suggesting this is the case in his case, but it is a hypothetical situation I'd like his answer to. Let's imagine that his wife was to go off and meet another fellow, perhaps a fellow who has his own divorce in his background and maybe custody of his child, and they decide to set up a home, and with one mother figure, one father figure, and a couple of siblings. Is it not in some cases better that the previous parents, who may not be the main custody people involved, allow that new family to get on with their life and grow as a normal family with one father figure, one mother figure, and a couple of siblings, rather than having an extra pair of parents coming in on weekends and holidays?
Okay, you made your point. What do you say?
I think after you get over the original panic of seeing your child leaving and you get over the hatred and the frustration of dealing with the court systems and everything else, you sit down and you say, now, let me assess it. What is really best for my child? Now, that's also going to be up for grabs, just like who was right and who was wrong in the parental situation. My son came to me this summer and said, Dad, wherever I go, you go, right? And wherever you go, I go, right, Daddy? And I said, that's right. Now, I made my child a promise, and I'm going to keep it. And yeah, you can argue day and night as to which parent should they be with and so on. My situation now, of course, is that I have a really wonderful lady at home who's just been terribly supportive. We lived together for 2 years. We have 2 new children. And my little guy, during our access periods, watched those 2 little half-brothers of his, grow from the embryo.
So therefore you would
stage.
say that your new family is the ideal environment for Seiji.
Absolutely.
Christopher.
I should also point out to the caller that it's very easy to take a cut-and-dried stand on this, but you're dealing with a wealth of emotions, of hatred, frustration, resentment, and bitterness. And if you have children out there, sir, I ask you, could you possibly not ever look for your children if your ex-wife was to take off with them and deny you total access and any kind of responsibility to rear that child.
Oh, and the truly intelligence. Do you ever meet cases where couples actually settle custody with love and with amity and friendship, and they each have got new families? And
Certainly love for the children, yes,
Yeah.
sure.
That's
and
the
those are
key
the good,
point.
those cases you never hear about.
No.
The thing that caller raises, though, is another point, and that is that from a legal point of view, the courts are taking a very strong position with regard to abduction. And they're saying it is wrong, and if a court order is broken, we are not going to allow that to happen. So we are going to say that no matter, unless there's been abuse or something like that, but we are going to acknowledge that by making a new order that the person, as in Barry's case, who lost the child, is going to have custody. And then that other person is going to have to come here and fight it out. Now, I think it's quite clear that it doesn't always work well. all
No,
right?
but
it's better than it was before.
there must be some respect for the law, and
That's right,
those
and I
who
think
break
that's
the
why it's
law
been-
must in some way suffer. Wouldn't we all agree on that?
There's got to be cooperation, and a lot of times family conciliation services, can assist you in that regard in terms of getting some cooperation. But in my case, Jack, it just didn't happen.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
Congratulations on making your point to the Eastern Media Mafia first.
Thank you.
Second one is directed at your guests, and that is, how does one prevent a ex-spouse from abducting the children when during a summer visitation, if the ex-spouse wants to take them out of the province, say to Ontario to visit with the child's grandparents, how does one safeguard against this phone call that I heard mentioned earlier? I'm sorry, but you're not going to see your
Karen,
child.
how do you safeguard against that?
You really can't. The only thing that you can do, at least not that I'm aware of, unless Julie's got some great suggestions, but I just haven't got any for you. And the only thing I can suggest is that you keep your relationship with your ex-spouse as amicable as you can.
Karen's point's very good. I should add that there are some things that you can probably do to teach your child how to be street-proofed, and we maybe have to come back and talk about that. Things, how to prevent your child from being abducted for your own resources, as well as teaching your child what to look for. Even in the cases of parental abduction, there are some things, and we have pamphlets on that if the caller's interested, I can forward to him.
But we're talking about two subjects. Surely you don't have to street-proof your child against the other half of the
In some
union.
cases, I would suggest it. Yes, I would.
At least teach them enough to know how to make a phone call and say, "Hey, Daddy, I think I'm about to leave."
And you know why? Because the final battle in a marital war is the child custody. And by that point in time, you typically have such hostile parents that they can no longer work together. So how do you safeguard the best interests of your child or your children? You have to teach those children some values here. And if the parent that has a child truly believes that they are right in having that child, then they can talk to their child about why and the wherefores.
Fair enough. After the break. Julie Cullen of BC Childfinder, Barry Nichols, parent with a problem, Karen Nordlinger, my legal friend and family law. Go ahead, please.
Hi. My child was taken away from me about 2 years ago by my ex-husband, and I know where they are. They're in the Fiji Islands, and I had given him custody of her because he was financially well off and he could support her. And before he asked me if he could go to Fiji for a holiday, and I told my lawyer about it, and my lawyer went into the Supreme Court and made a court order saying that she could go with him from October till February, and after that he had to come back to BC, and he never did come back. And,
Is he from Fiji?
I'm sorry?
Is he from Fiji?
He is. And I was there last year, and I tried to go to the authorities over there, and they couldn't do anything about it. I took my court order, and it just didn't stand in Fiji. And I went to the family court over here, and the only way I can fight this battle is if I have money and I can do it on my own.
There's your typical synopsis of the average parent that we deal with in Child Find is simply that they don't have the money, the court orders are no good where the children are located, and if they can't hire a lawyer to fight that in Fiji, her only avenue, and I hate to say it, is to go down and try to get the child back into this jurisdiction.
Steal the child.
We're back to the old truth, I guess, that possession is 99 9/10 of the law, you know, which is sad.
Karen?
Well, I agree with them. I think that one of the things we should say is that if you have no money and your child is abducted, legal aid will probably assist. Now, legal aid has its own problems right now.
It'll give you minimal help.
But it will sort of, it will find you a lawyer, and that will be of some assistance.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I'd like to ask Mr. Nichols a question.
Go ahead.
I'd like to know, when he was looking for his child, he said that perhaps the child was in New Jersey or went to Honolulu or something. Could he get any help at all from the government through our embassies or anything like that? Would the government interfere in any way or intervene in some way?
My lawyer has suggested that we go through the Attorney General's office and then to the Solicitor General in terms of getting him, say, out of a foreign country. I'm still led to believe that the quickest way is that I get the money together and fly down and find him myself. It's a sad thing, but I believe true, that if you want something done, generally you go and do it yourself. You know, that may not always be the case, but I think the other thing a parent faces is that this panic of just wanting to see your child. And perhaps the other thing that I faced is if somebody goes down there, tries to get him on my behalf, is unsuccessful, will she then run again? In other words, I've already found her once. So when I go in there to get him, I want to make sure it's clean and that it's right. You know?
Go ahead, please.
Morning. I have two questions for you. The first one is, I'm wondering how long it takes for the police to react to a parent who's lost a child. If that has been sped up at all, the process.
I don't know if...
Did you go through this yourself, ma'am?
No, I'm not. I was just wondering. I thought it was 24 hours.
Well, just a minute. Let me ask a question. What about 251(1) of the Criminal Code? In what circumstances will the Crown lay a charge of abduction?
I'm not sure. I've spoken to some of the prosecutors about that, and the last time I spoke to them, they were attempting to formulate a policy on it, and I don't know whether that policy's been formulated or not. But I would... Don't
they look at the court order and say, family dispute, they're all
They
about
say,
it.
look, this is domestic. What do you want us to do about it? Bottom line, Jack, that's the way it is out there. Unfortunately, the police don't have the manpower, they don't have the mandate from the up aboves to come in and say, lady, okay, your kid has been kidnapped, but, you know, she's with the dad. So what's so terrible about that? They don't look at it that way. It's just a point of view.
Might go to a woman policeman who would give a different response.
Sure.
There's another rule, too, in this province. If the child is taken to somewhere in this province, and you've got a custody order, you can go back to the Supreme Court and get an order specifically directing the police to apprehend the child, and at that point the police will.
If they have an order to apprehend, then...
However, there's a point on that. And if you remember, there's a case of the Laura Davidson case being handled where the mother who had the children taken from her by the police in Vancouver on behalf of the Ontario father, she is now suing the Vancouver Police Department for going in and getting the children, and it said right in the court order that the police are to assist under any circumstances. So
when I first went into the police station in the jurisdiction in which she lived originally, I went in with a court order plus a warrant. Now, the court order was date stamped by the registry, but the warrant was a Xerox copy and was not date stamped by the registry, and they didn't want to move on it until I came back with one that had been stamped, and even then, it was registered in that police office, but it was not put out on their computer system.
Not on CPIC.
Not on CPIC.
My thanks to Karen Nordlinger. Thanks for coming here this morning. Been a big help, Karen. My thanks and my sympathies to Barry Nicholl.
I'll find him.
Best of luck with Child Finder.
Thank you.
And we'll put up the name and address again.
Good.
And I'll be back after the break.
Jack, that building represents the end of a long, hard 10-year battle. It's a new cancer clinic adjacent to Vancouver General Hospital and operated under the direction of the Cancer Control Agency of British Columbia. The provincial government has solely funded it to the tune of $36 million. 1 out of every 4 British Columbians will likely develop some form of cancer this year, and this new state-of-the-art building is providing them with new hope, as well as providing 50 new hospital beds and 150 new jobs. Dr. Boyes, you're the director of the clinic, correct?
That's right.
Tell me what this building has replaced.
Well, this
we've been growing the last few years, and we had the old Evans Clinic, which was on Heather Street, and most of our doctors were down on the corner of Broadway and Heather, and we had to expand and pull everybody together. We also needed more hospital beds, and that's where we are now. So it has replaced the old Evans Clinic. It has replaced the old hospital unit and also the building where the doctors were down on Broadway and Heather.
So all the three facilities have been joined into one rather modern-looking place.
Well, we hope so. It's just finished. We've just moved in, so it does look modern and is indeed.
This is the culmination of a long-fought battle, isn't it?
It's about a decade of hard work to bring something like this into line, and I'm delighted that you're here because we do see a lot of patients. We had 5,600 new patients last year, and so a lot of people from around the province will be interested to know that we have this new facility because, as you know, the old one was pretty dingy, and people who will be coming here in the future would like to see it as well, so I'm delighted that you're here.
What is the state of the art? Does this manifest the state of the art in cancer research and treatment and diagnosis?
We think so. One can't have everything in research because, and nor should one, because you shouldn't replicate what other people are doing well, but in terms of treatment, it's certainly state of the art, and our research is appropriate and highly regarded around the world. So,
is British Columbia high on the echelon of cancer research on a world basis?
Yes, it's. You must realize that we just started putting that research center together about 6 years ago. We had radiobiology before that, but we've added research in chemotherapy, hormone therapy, we added epidemiology, and that includes studies of prevention, and research into leukemia have all been added within the last 5 years. So it's relatively new, but yes, I think we could say it is world-class and highly regarded.
How are we doing? Are we winning the battle against cancer? It just still conjures such fear and trembling in people when they hear the very word.
Yes, we haven't won the war, but we've certainly won a lot of battles, and I'll use a few examples to try to let you know that the systems that we have developed have produced some results. Hodgkin's disease, which used to be a lethal cancer of young people, and I'm sure you've heard of it, we're now curing about 80% of all Hodgkin's disease that presents to us. Well, from 0 to 80% we look upon as significant.
Over how many years was that accomplished?
It was over about a decade. The same is true of testicular tumors. Again, not one of the most common, but a fairly common one. We're up overall over 90% in treating those. And the acute leukemics, where they all were really lethal 6 or 7 years ago, we now believe we're curing about 30% of them. So, but then you look around at breast, which is a common one. Our improvement rate is only about perhaps 15%, and bowel we have not improved very much, perhaps a little bit. Lung we really haven't improved at all. So some of the big ones we have not been too successful with.
Has any of the efforts by Terry Fox or the money he raised, has that gone into this building or the advancements made here?
No, it has not gone into this building at all. But he was fairly firm in what he wished money spent on, and it was to do with research to improve treatment. And we've had significant funding from that endeavor. And one of the nicest things that we got out of it was a research training establishment to train young professionals in the ways of doing research, and we're well funded for that.
Is that housed in this building now?
That's actually across the street, but the clinicians who are involved in that program work in this building as well, but the actual training center is across the street.
This building was around $36 million?
That's right, yes.
Why don't we take a walk around? You can show me some of the places. We can start down this way.
Please do.
Okay. Look at this brief look we've had so far. We can tell that we've
You've made an effort to make things brighter than you normally associate with a hospital.
Yes, we have. We've tried to choose colors and to create an ambience, if you'll forgive the use of that word, which has become so common, that would be pleasant. All of our patients face life-threatening disease, and we have to do anything we can to make things comfortable for them. This room is an example. You can see that it has a splendid view from quite nice windows.
That's something you don't normally see in a hospital room, is a big picture window like that.
That's right, and each room has a view. You notice we put the hospital unit on the top, just for that reason, that every patient could...
And below are the treatment rooms and the offices and that sort of thing.
That's right. Every patient has their own phone. We were lucky we had a donor who gave us the money so that we could do that, and we got these touch phones so the patients, if they're not feeling well, they don't have to sit up. They can just reach over and pick up that phone and...
talk to family. Is that the hardest part, getting the people over that first hurdle of confronting the fact that they have this disease?
It is indeed. It's for some reason that I'm really unable to answer. It strikes such fear into people's imaginations and some resentment. You know, they don't know why me. They don't know why that should be. And so yes, we have to be very aware of the emotional needs of our patients.
Does treatment often depend on the attitude of the...
It certainly has helped. It's hard to measure something like that and say that you can prove that a patient with a good attitude has a better survival rate than one who doesn't. Really, you can't say that with any scientific accuracy. But I just wanted to point out that each patient has their own television. They're not all in yet. There's one on this bed.
Oh, over here.
And the Order of the Eastern Star are working so that eventually every patient will have a colored television set they won't be charged for.
Can you tell the average stay of a patient would stay here?
Well, on this floor, we have patients who are in for fairly short periods of time because they're on chemotherapy regimes that require them to be in at precise intervals. That's a good word to use on the Jack Webster show.
Right.
For 2 to 3 days, and then they're away again, and that's the nature of using that treatment modality. So that the stay on this ward is short, perhaps averaging 2 days. Overall, the stay in our place is about 5 days because while some patients stay a lot longer, a lot are in for just short periods like the ones I mentioned.
Why don't we take a look at some of the treatment areas?
Yes. There's a bathroom there in the corner for each of our 2-bed.
Are they all 2-bed wards, or?
Mostly 2-bed wards. We have a couple of 4-bed wards on each floor.
This is a spacey-looking gadget here. What's this?
Well, Steve, I'd like you to introduce you to Dr. George Anderson.
Dr. Anderson? Nice to meet you.
How do you do?
Describe this thing to me. What is it?
This is an electron microscope. It's a highly sophisticated instrument which we use for examining portions of tumors which are a particular diagnostic problem. They allow us to have a greatly increased magnification of these tumors as compared to a regular microscope that a pathologist uses.
Am I wrong? I remember these things as being huge at one time.
They were. This is one of the latest models available nowadays, and because of advances in technology, the size has come down, as you see, considerably, just as it has in a lot of other areas, such as computers, for instance.
What would be the value of something like this?
This machine would cost about $150,000. It also takes considerable specific training and experience, and 2 members of our staff have each spent a week in Germany learning how to use the machine and how to maintain it.
It's an invaluable diagnostic tool, I would guess, then, isn't it?
Oh, it's extremely useful indeed.
What can it do in particular that you would use it for on a daily basis, say?
Well, it can allow us to distinguish between one sort of tumor and another sort of tumor. this is the application for which it's used at the Cancer Control Agency. Can also be used in other areas for identifying viruses, and in the non-medical fields it has many other applications as well.
I see. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you. Where are we now?
Well, we're in the area where the pap smears that come in by mail are opened, and you can see the slides are put on top of the requisition.
This clinic has made significant inroads in this area.
We've been one of the major laboratories to show that this was a worthwhile procedure. And this is the start. You can see they're opened, and a number is put on the slide, and a number is put on the requisition. And the requisitions then go to the data entry section, and the slides go next door to get stained. And then they're married up again after the file that we keep on a computer is checked to see if there's previous significant data on that case. So every one of the 2,500, or the 2,000 to 2,500, goes through that old file to see if there's significant information on them.
And through this, you're able to prevent at least one form of cancer.
That's right. We've reduced the mortality from cancer of the cervix by about 75% with this program.
In British Columbia?
In British Columbia.
That's tremendous.
Well, we think it's good, yeah. That's what
good.
we...
Okay, thanks very much. Keep up the good work. Here's some of this equipment we see.
Yes, Steve, this is a 12, Mevitron 12. It's actually a 10 million electron volt linear accelerator, which puts out a beam that is similar to that which comes from an X-ray tube, except much more powerful. Now, Sandra Perry's here. Sandra, this
Hi,
is
Sandra.
Steve Wyatt.
Hi,
Sandra
Steve.
operates this machine, so perhaps...
Tell me, what does it do, basically, and simply, what forms of cancer does it treat? And
Well, we treat all forms of cancer in here, and basically what happens is that the patient comes in and lies on the bed, and we have specific instructions on how to treat them, how to position them, and we put them on the bed, set up to those instructions, and the treatment usually takes a minute per area, roughly.
is this a modernized version of the old cobalt treatments we used to hear about all the
It's
time?
a more sophisticated, mechanically more sophisticated. It's the same type of treatment, but these modern sophisticated machines, we can do so much more with these.
Does this
than we
thing
could-
tilt around and everything like that?
Yes, I'll
or-
let you see that.
So this is to treat different areas. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, the patient is lying on this
The
bed here.
Yeah, this bed moves into the center. This machine can go straight through 360 degrees, and we can treat at any angle
Oh, I
at
see.
all. You see it go right around. Like
And how does it work? I mean, simply, does it? I mean,
Well, simply there's a target inside of this, and electrons bombard that target. We have X-rays produced, extremely high energy X-rays, not the type that you would use for a diagnosis, but for a therapeutic purpose for treating patients. And inside this, there's huge big diaphragms, lead block type things, and they will cone down the area of radiation to any size that we demand. We prescribe what size of treatment we want to give the patients.
In layman's terms, then, does it in effect burn a tumor, or what does it do?
I think effectively dissolves it, hopefully.
Yeah. For lack of a better word. Right?
Yeah.
Is this a particularly state-of-the-art piece of equipment, or is this now obsolete? They seem to
No.
change so fast.
I don't think this is obsolete. I think this is as sophisticated as it gets. We have very sophisticated equipment in Vancouver. We have a very well-equipped department here, and the patients here are getting state-of-the-art as it is in 1984.
Thank you very much, Sandra.
Okay, thank
Great.
you.
We were talking earlier about the emotional impact for someone who discovers they have cancer. What area is this?
Well, we're in the social service area right now, and we have a very fine staff. But the person I'd like to introduce you to is Reverend Colin Johnstone, who's our chaplain, and he works...
Hello.
This is
Hi there.
Steve Wyatt. Colin. He works with Richard Dahl, who's head of our social service, and Barb Warren, from our nursing department to try and integrate a team that provides the emotional support for our patients. So,
do you deal with the patients exclusively, or the families, or both?
Well, all of us here work with both patients and families. Sometimes the most important person is the family member, so they can be the natural supporter to the patient.
Is it true that one of the major hurdles for the doctors and the nurses and the patient himself is the mental attitude? How do you deal with that?
Sure. People are frightened by cancer. It has a lot of symbolic value, all the black and destruction and pain. And so to deal with those kinds of fears and anxieties are really an important part, because people are reluctant to be treated, or their depression affects the treatment unless those kinds of things are dealt with. Yeah.
Do you find do you have to break through a lot of mythology, a lot of superstition, and almost irrational fears?
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure that breakthrough, but certainly those irrational fears are there. Fears that come from maybe 30, 40 years ago, they knew somebody who had cancer and were treated in a certain way. So a lot of false information, not sometimes ignorance, but basically false information that comes out of popular magazines, false information that comes from old experiences that they've had, that they don't know what's happening in the way of modern treatment, and they don't know how to deal with the terrible stress and the terrible anxiety that comes with having cancer.
What's the hardest part for you? What is the most difficult thing to deal with for you?
Oh, I guess dealing with people who get into a deep despair and are almost as if they're caught in this kind of despair and hopelessness, and they almost don't want to get out of it. And that's a really tough one, where you have to really sort of...
The giving up, the whole giving up.
When they've given up, yeah. And that's a temporary thing with most people, and you can get them out of that. But when they stay in it, that's hard on the family and hard on everybody.
Is that part of the physical appearance of this new clinic? Are you trying through that to, I don't know, maybe encourage people that things are not as bad as they may appear?
Well, yes. I mean, obviously, the light coloring, the lights, the open windows, the space gives sort of overcomes the feelings of despair and depression, but also the fact that I lost my train. So that, yes, that is really what's happening.
Are attitudes changing? Are people more aware now, would you say?
Okay, well, I've worked here in the clinic for almost 9 years now, and I'd say in that 9 years, all of us have become aware that patients are far more knowledgeable. They're not caught up as much with the old myths. They know about chemotherapy. They know about radiotherapy. They know that there's things that can be done, and they're expecting positive results.
And there's always this old debate whether or not, I mean, we're talking maybe about terminal patients here. Could we generalize? Can you put a general rule? Should the patient be told that he's terminal, that his cancer is untreatable now, or is there a demand to know, or can you answer a question like that?
First of all, we'd spend an hour discussing what you really mean by terminal.
Yeah.
All the patients we have have a life-threatening disease. Either it's really threatening their lives, or they feel their life threatened. They want to know as many facts as will help them. And when they ask the question, I think they should be answered honestly and clearly. Sometimes we know that a patient is in probably a final phase of their disease, and it's very hard for them to not know what's happening. And nobody should ever hide things from them or lie to them. That doesn't mean you go around trying to bludgeon them with facts, but you certainly support them more by... Patients find it easier to deal with what they know than the mysteries of what they don't know.
This is a very impressive building, and it's state-of-the-art. It's bringing British Columbia up to one of the higher levels of cancer research and treatment. But in view of all of that, the cases of cancer seem to be going up still.
Yeah. Well, indeed they are. One of the things that we keep hearing about is our peculiar lifestyles that we live in our society. And the result of the lifestyles is that, on both men and women, is that the life expectancy of a 60-year-old man has increased by almost 12% every decade since the Second World War. That of a 60-year-old woman has increased by almost 14%. So we have far more older people. Two-thirds of cancers almost occur in people over the age of 60. So the cancer age group has just increased immensely in our society.
So it's a condition of our state and history, so to speak, I suppose, that there aren't more cases of cancer, there are just more people susceptible to it.
That's exactly right, and it's an important point because people see a lot more cancer and they fear it's becoming epidemic. You hear that. It's not. The age-specific incident has not increased at all in this province over the times that we've been measuring it, like the last 25 years, but we are seeing a lot more patients.
What are the most common forms?
Well, the most common form here is cancer of the gastrointestinal tract. In men, lung is the most common. In women, breast is. But bowel is second in both, so because it's common in both sexes.
Do we not eat properly?
Geographic pathology, that is, differing bowel cancer rates around in different countries, suggests that's the case, but numerous studies have been mounted, and some very good ones in Canada, and we have not been able to prove it. At the moment, we suspect that that fiber and fat are the two things that perhaps influence this, and in some geographic studies, vitamin C as well, but we've not been able to prove it.
What do you say to this prevailing attitude out there that you can't do anything anymore without getting cancer?
Well, I sometimes feel that way myself, because people like you, and I don't mean it personally, Steve, I mean in the media, are ready to pick up any story and broadcast it, and I'm sure, I know you do it because the public is interested, but the public is exposed to a barrage of cancer-related materials, and so that's why I'm so glad you asked me what you just did, because I'd like to say again, the age-specific incidence is not increasing in this province, and that data is firm. But what's happening, we've got a lot more older people.
So there is definite advancement and new hope.
That's right. We're doing quite well.
Oh yes, one thing I must tell you about right now. People keep stealing things off my desk. Where is it? Why? Can't leave a thing lying around here, but somebody will tidy up the place. The Terry Fox Run is Sunday, September 23rd, 1984. Start at the Vancouver Jewish Community Centre, 41st and Oak. You can run or walk routes of 7 to 10 kilometers. We expect a very big turnout. The registration is $5. Pre-register if you can. This, of course, is for the magnificent Terry Fox effort in cancer. The race starts at 8 a.m. Late registration starts at 6:30 a.m. That's the registration on the day of the race. Wheelchair participants are welcome in the Terry Fox Run. That's Sunday. Monday, we don't start until 9:30 a.m. precisely. We only have an hour. And we've got Willie DeWitt, Canada's magnificent boxer, and Anne Mara, who's a delightful expert on the royal family. Monday at 9:30 a.m. precisely.